What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Pro vs. Pro. I am super excited for this week, for this show. We've made it. We've made it through the multi-course events. We finally have a single course event. It is in Phoenix, Arizona, where my Eagles are playing in the Super Bowl this weekend. I'm stoked. Are you as excited as I am for this event?
Dude, I can't believe we didn't decide to go down there and just hang out. We could have the show from out there, gone to watch some golf, gone to the Super Bowl. I could have made a week of it.
Would have been a bit of an easier trip for you to make than me here in Pennsylvania. And this is where I want to be. I want to be near Philadelphia as this hopefully wonderful Super Bowl week comes to fruition.
For sure. But I just think, man, what an atmosphere out there it's got to be. It's already probably for me, it's not my favorite golf course, my favorite, anything like that. But just as an event as a whole, the player, the fans love it. And it's just so fun. And they've done a great job creating that.
I think that it's the most attended sporting event in the world every year. I don't know that for sure, but I've seen it in enough places. I didn't confirm it, but I think that's the case. And it certainly checks out from just like an intuitive standpoint.
Yeah, I saw something about it actually this morning, and I kind of was like, man, they're lined up thousands deep when they open the doors in the morning.
Yeah, multiple holes. It's nuts. But yeah, I think, I don't know about you. Maybe you don't feel this way since you said this isn't necessarily your favorite course, but I actually think like as much as I love the atmosphere of the 16th hole, I think there are some holes on this golf course that get completely overlooked that are among the best in the world because of the 16th. Like the par 5 15th, the par 4 drivable 17th. I think they're phenomenal golf holes and don't get enough credit.
So when I played college golf, for every year for spring break, we flew to Phoenix and we played a rotation of courses, Greyhawk, and then TPC Scottsdale was one of them. Back then, ASU Karsten had a great golf course and actually a really good practice facility. It's not even there anymore. I think it's condos, but it just, when I played, that was a long time ago, and the game's evolved quite a bit in the last 20 years, which is about how long it's been. I just never really, to me, it's so similar to TPC Craig Ranch where they played the Nelson up here now that I just, wide fairways, a couple of like really good holes in there, but a lot of, kind of very similar holes. Now, I will say this, if you hit it outside the wide fairways, it's pretty penal. So there is definitely that side of it. But I agree that the 15th, the 17th, and then really the 16th is a terrible golf hole for a PGA Tour event if you take away the crowd. So it's a great hole. It's just it's a great hole because of the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because of the atmosphere that's been created there. And I want your take on this too. Like, I think one thing you hear every time we come to this event is, why don't we get more atmospheres like this on tour? And my kind of take is, this happened very organically and naturally, and it developed through the years. I don't think that you could try to just recreate this in another event and have it be anywhere near as exciting. Like, I think it would come off as corny.
So they tried to do it, and actually probably before Phoenix got as big as it did, at the Byron Nelson, back when they played TPC Las Colinas, the 17th, there is a very, very similar down. It's a lot better par 3 really than there, but it's it's a 6-iron straight down the hill, water short and right, got to hit good shots. But they had the same thing there. They had grandstands all the way around. As a matter of fact, just a little inside knowledge that they were going to get the Nelson back, but the guy that wants to develop that land that bought right there on the 17th wouldn't allow them to put grandstands up. And they're like, well, if we can't put grandstands up there, then it really defeats the purpose of having the tournament here.
It would be really
but you're right. I think it just became a party. I mean, go back and watch Tiger's hole-in-one there. I mean, it wasn't anything like it is now, but you could already see it start to transform into kind of a party hole.
There's a chance that it wouldn't look anything like it does today without that hole-in-one.
I mean, I can't argue with it. Yeah. I don't think. I think that the all the grandstands just allow more people to see it. I think it would still be that rowdy. I just think it'd be 50 deep and the people in the back are just back there in a party not watching golf.
Exactly. You kind of pivoted to course fit there, and I'm really excited to have Josh Culp joining us, kind of our second lead PGA analyst. I want to talk to him about a few things, so I'm going to bring him on now. There he is. Josh, how you doing today?
Hey, guys.
Awesome.
Doing good.
Excellent. So the first thing I want to ask you is, I think kind of one of the strongest things that we've done here at FTN this year with our PGA product is combining our course fit approaches, not necessarily into one, but trying to find ways to tie them together instead of just letting them exist like independent of one another. So the first thing I want to bring up this week is we both found a lot of signal here for driving distance and for around the green play. So question number one is, how much more confidence do you get in kind of your own research and just specific plays, knowing that we both have come to the same conclusion with different routes?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like my favorite part of my week now, like kind of seeing where we line up and where we differ. But anytime you have like projections, they're going to improve if you have multiple, people coming at it the right way. Like you can't just throw together random projections and expect to increase the power of them. But if you have people coming at it the right way, I think when it lines up, it's just that much better.
Yeah, Justin and I have talked a number of times, like he and I have very different approaches, but we oftentimes get to the same conclusion. You and I are both like super analytically inclined, Josh, but we also have our own unique process. Like I think you've brought some of the coolest data that I've seen in the PGA industry at FTN. Super happy to have all of that with us. One area though where we differ this week is it seems like I am weighing driving accuracy a little bit more than you. So when we do have that difference, and I guess first I should ask, like, am I correct about that? And then the second thing is, if I am, how does that kind of change your approach? Like, are you then kind of hedging that analysis, or are you trying to find a way to explain the way that, or how we have come to different conclusions about it?
Yeah, I think it varies case by case. Like I'm always trying to like, why is Alex seeing that? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can be easily explained, and other times it's like, I don't know what he's seeing or why he's seeing that. But I think over time, if there's something where something you're seeing in your model continually, shows up and it doesn't show up on mine, then that's where you have to like kind of reevaluate mm-hmm. my process. And it's like, what am I missing there? But I think the way we come at it slightly different is good because, sometimes you'll pick up on something and the other times I'll pick up on something, and, it might lead me to someone a little more accurate if, I'm on the fence this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also I think it would help people to know that like you and I discuss all of our findings behind stage too, but even before like I write my article, I've already talked to you about what you found, the differences, maybe looked a little bit into why we found those differences. So a lot of really good stuff happening behind closed doors for us in the course fit world as well. Personally, I think that the driving accuracy signal difference this week could come just from the power of the strokes gained driving accuracy metric that we came up with last year, where, I think like in one of the screenshots you sent me, I saw fairways gained had a low correlation. And I'm wondering if maybe that's just that, hey, distance is important here. So the inverse correlation between distance and fairways gained maybe makes the signal for accuracy just kind of drowned out because distance is so important here. Whereas when you look at the strokes gained driving accuracy statistic, that metric, it's isolated fully from the distance component. And so maybe you're then able to get a little bit more signal. But we actually discussed too, like almost trying to find a new metric that really captures what we've been talking as like an interaction between distance and accuracy, where accuracy can be rewarded disproportionately when a player is also long than when he's not. And one of your quotes, I think that perfectly encapsulates that is you referenced Brooks Koepka talking about like some of the longer hitters can take really aggressive lines that can eliminate some of the issues off the tee, like fairway bunkers here or there, and really set themselves up for really good wedge shots and scoring opportunities. And so I think that's where you can see, like, if you have the distance and you also have the accuracy, you're ending up with a lot of scoring chances when other people in the field are just going to be struggling for par. So maybe you get that interaction that way. But in any case, I think we both agree, like, it's never going to hurt you to be accurate if you're also really long. So there's maybe not a whole lot to take from this difference. We, of course, want accurate guys, and we both agree, like, you want guys who really bomb it here.
Yeah, I think what you said with, using your driving accuracy method, like, I think that's the difference because, when you look at that list, it's not like any other accuracy list you'll find anywhere on the internet. I mean, it's like, it really encapsulates how the distance impacts the accuracy.
Yeah, like Rory, Rahm, Cameron Young, they're up there near the top of the world in strokes gained driving accuracy. You're not going to find that in percent of fairways, but when you watch them, you can kind of see that, right? Like the guys they're bombing the ball 320 to 350 at times off the tee, and they're hitting their lines. That's incredibly impressive.
A lot of that goes too with it. This golf course with the accuracy stuff is they're cutting these corners so the width of the fairway to your eye, maybe let's call it 32 yards.
Yep.
But actually, if you fly it 310, it's like 70 yards.
Yeah.
Because the fairway is actually working down the fairway to the hole because it's going around the dog leg. I mean, I can think of, I think it's 1 and then 3, the par 5, that are exactly like that. Like if you hit it far enough to carry that fairway bunker, it really doesn't matter if you hit your exact line as long as you hit it far enough to hit it over.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people talk about that here, and like they tried to fix it in 2014 with the renovation, but I don't think they accounted for the increased distance continued to increase.
Yeah, and the other thing there is like when you are cutting a corner, an extra 30 yards in distance becomes like an effective 60-yard advantage because you're not just hitting it further, but you're also taking a more direct line to the hole. So
especially with the firm fairways here.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So all of that basically says driving.
I mean, that's like almost every year they get really firm.
Yeah, I mean, I know like sometimes you'll get the grass is sticky itself because it's all overseed. So it has to be like super firm to play firm. So it doesn't take much moisture to slow them down. And that's something that I haven't seen much on yet is how is the rough and is it playing firm and fast? I mean, what year was it that Ricky chipped it in the water because the greens had gotten firm? It had started to rain and then it got kind of skiddy on top of the firm and it really changed things. But I haven't seen much about how it's going to play this year.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think the only thing I saw was that the overseed was slower to grow in this year, but like, I don't know what that means right now, what it's like. So
yeah,
keep an eye on
that. The pictures I saw, it looks full and healthy and as good as ever. But I haven't heard anything yet about the actual pace of the golf course, which changes this place like probably more than anywhere else. Because if he gets, it makes those.
I think every year they try to, kind of let it go as the tournament progresses. So either way, it'll be firm by Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been a lot of times in the last few years where like we hear leading up to an event, oh, it's softer than usual. They're not happy with it. And everyone's like, okay, if it's going to be really soft this year, how do we want to react? And then by Friday afternoon, it's like rock hard and super fast because the conditions can just make a golf course change that quickly. One last thing on the regular course fit, Justin, Josh and I both found a lot of signal around the greens. I think that's coming not just from greens typically being firmer and harder to hold, so you get a lot of kind of short game opportunities to save par, but I think it's also coming from scoring. Would you agree with the emphasis on around the green play? And I know a lot of the time you don't like to group all short game shots together. You like thinking about how good is this guy out of tight lies? How good is this guy out of rough? How good is this guy out of the bunker? So how are you kind of approaching the whole short game situation this week?
I think this is kind of an overall week where they all kind of mix together because you'll have a little bit of everything. I find myself leaning to guys that are really good bunker players because on a lot of the scoring holes, you're going to be around whether it's a drivable par 4 or par 5, you're going to be around the green and the place to miss generally speaking, is in the bunkers around there. So and these guys know that they want to hit it in the bunker. I mean, that goes a lot of time, but I think here especially. So, that if I had to lean one way or the other, I think these guys, especially late in the week, you can spin the ball more out of the bunker. You don't have to worry about hitting it fat out of some of the tighter lies. I just think that if I had to pick a direction as far as the short game goes, that's where I'd lean. But, you get some – by the end of the week, you get some longer of the, the rough that is more like that bunker shot type of rough. And then the tight lies, albeit they're pretty easy, they're not like Augusta tight lies. They're not into the grain Bermuda. They're, oversea dry. But, that it still matters. You still got to hit good shots, especially as the greens get firmer. I'm not putting a whole lot of – I'm not leaning one way over the other, right? I'm not afraid – it's not going to take me off a guy because of one or the other.
Love it. I think if I had to sum up what Josh and I try to do, like as short as possible with our course fit stuff, it's doing predictive analysis instead of descriptive analysis. And basically what that means is we're trying to best find like what skill sets are going to translate into success instead of just looking at what skill sets have led to success in the past within that event. And so I think like a perfect example of this is a lot of the time you'll see a golf course where maybe around the green play is really descriptively important. So basically like when you look at past winners and past leaderboards, a lot of those guys have performed really well that week around the green. And the industry will often make an inference that says, okay, if the guys who have done well here have done it because they gained a lot around the green, it's probably true that around the green specialists are most likely to do that this week. And oftentimes that's true and that's fair. But when it's not true, we end up getting a really big advantage from taking a more predictive approach, and those who are making that inference end up at a severe disadvantage. And the reason I bring that up this week is because we've started to work more with Data Golf's new approach skill data, where basically they are bucketing approach shots into like 100 to 150 yards, 150 to 200, 200 to 250, and they're giving us all kinds of data from here. They're giving us strokes gained per shot. They're giving us good shot percentage, bad shot percentage, proximity. And as we use this data more and more, I get concerned that we can fall into the same trap of just saying, oh, there are a lot of shots from 150 yards to 200 this week. Let's look for guys who are really good there. But just because they're descriptively important in terms of how many shots are coming from that range or whatever, doesn't mean that it's going to be predictively important. So Josh, the first question to you is, in using this kind of data, what's your approach to make sure that you're using it in a predictive way?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good example is like I used a golfer's lead-in stat profile instead of just what they did that tournament. I think that's kind of going to eliminate a lot of those issues of being too descriptive. And I think sometimes you just need to know when the stats are, it might pop a little, but it might not be that important. So you have to make sure you don't get too caught up in when it's like a fringe kind of stat.
Yeah, I love that you use the lead-in form instead of just how they done in the tournament. That's absolutely a really good way to make sure it's predictive. That's kind of the whole premise behind my course fit model too, is I look at their strokes gained profile as a whole, not what they've done in that event, and then just look at how they do in that event based on their actual strokes gained profile and get the predictive measure that way. I think another thing, and I'll turn to you, Justin, here, is we can kind of understand like the types of shots that players are getting from that range. So from a predictive standpoint, for example, this week, like I was surprised to see, even though there are a lot of shots from 150 to 200, I didn't get much predictive value from that range. I got more from the 200 plus range. And so my first thought was, hey, maybe there are a lot of high leverage shots from that range, which we get on some par five. So the way I would define a high leverage shot is like a par five with water around the green, for example, where the best shots are going to set you up for an easy birdie opportunity, maybe even an eagle. And the worst shots, you're now dropping in the fairway, just trying to get up and down from 100 yards to save par, and you're still faced with that water. Maybe you're going to end up making a double or a triple or something like that, where maybe a lot of the shots from 150 to 200 are lower leverage shots. So do you kind of look at that at all, like the types of shots that you're going to see from different ranges and take anything from that?
So this is where we are so different, and everything is where this is where the stat stuff, where I'm not as big into the stats and stuff because of what you just said. So like your best players in the world, now maybe not your winner, but your best players in the world, no matter what, from 150 to 200, you're probably making a par. It's just the way it is. Like you're not going to, I saw something earlier. Rory is making a birdie 25% of the time from 125 and in. That's important. You know what I mean? And then the other side of that is the par threes and the par fives. That's what does it for you, because you get those, what you just call a high value shot. I think that's an awesome way to look at it. You hit a good shot to the center of the green on every 210 shot, let's call it. So your par fives and your par threes. And so you play them 4 under. Just add it up 4 days, you're 16 under just to, over 8 holes a day. So what do you do the other 10? And that might be wrong. There might only be 3 here. I think it's par 70 here. But, you kind of understand my point of how important those shots are. And I want to know who's going to perform under that circumstance. I don't really – if you hit it 18 feet or if you hit it 21 feet from 175 yards, I don't care. Like, you're making the same score.
That's kind of what Koepka was talking about in his quotes too. It's like he's basically saying – when you can drive the ball long and straight here, you set yourself up for scoring opportunities that the rest of the field doesn't have. And that just creates this huge advantage. Josh, if I recall correctly, you actually did find some predictive value from the 150 to 200 range this week. But if I recall correctly, you also aren't going to put much weight into that. So why don't you discuss a little bit about what you found and how you're kind of approaching that this week?
Yeah, for me, it was kind of popping right where all the shots actually come from. The signal was kind of showing a little bit there, and then it was spread out from there. But it wasn't something that, it wasn't like leaping off the page. Mm-hmm. So when that's the case, and when I know this course, like you said, you can carry a bunker and, suddenly you have 125 in, or another guy is laying up and has 170 in, something like that. Like, the guys can have very large differences in their approach buckets here. So, it's not something I'm leaning heavily on this week. Like last week, it was like wedges. Like,
right. Yeah, I think you kind of said it perfectly there. Like what I found some real wedge signal here, by the way, as well. So I think my approach is going to be when I'm targeting somebody who's long and straight off the tee, I want to know how they're doing with their wedges. If I'm targeting somebody who's not very long off the tee, but is very accurate, like a Brian Harmon type, now I maybe care a little bit more about how he does with his mid and long irons than how he does with his wedges. But I think the long iron signal might just be there for everyone. But at the end of the day, like when I tried to separate the irons into the different buckets this week, my overall signal in the model actually went down from just using stroke gain approach. So I might just go with what the model there says in the course fit expected strokes gained and not get a whole or not get too deep into that rabbit hole like we did last week with the wedges. Before you get out of here, Josh, any players, whether it's a bet, whether it's a DFS play, or anyone who just really catches your eye this week and you're interested in seeing anyone really capture your interest this week?
Yeah, I think it's kind of feeling like 2014 all over again with Justin Rose winning last week, Ricky Fowler finding his form. So I'm going to keep riding Jason Day. So like push it all in on Jason Day. That's never hurt anyone, right?
only a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, Josh, really appreciate you hopping on. Really fun discussion there. And hopefully we can get more of that kind of mixed into this show as we go forward. Appreciate you and have a good one.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's interesting that he went straight to Jason Day there because, I've looked at him as far as where I stand as far as the way he's going to play. And man, I just can't get away from Aaron Wise over Jason Day in that same kind of similar fit. So I'd be, I can't fault him for the Jason Day play at all, because he's definitely popped on everything that I've looked at.
Yeah, same for me. And it's funny because he is no longer anywhere near as long as he once was. But the kind of odd thing is, like I talked earlier about the potential like interaction between distance and accuracy. He's become really accurate off the tee. He's actually gaining almost a quarter of a stroke per round now through driving accuracy alone. And that's just in the baseline. Like in his last 20 rounds, he's actually gaining almost a third of a stroke per round just through driving accuracy. And it's not like he's become short. So there's a real chance that he is a better fit for the course right now than he has been at any point in his career before coming to Phoenix.
And I mean, I think he's also kind of knows who he is at this point in his career too.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's like, this is who I am. This is how I'm going to play golf. I'm going to go out here and compete. I'm guessing he's going to have his family there, so he's not going to get caught up in all the other stuff where some of the younger guys might. I like Jason Day a lot. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, he has the ability to hit the ball to the moon when he needs to, coming down the stretch if he gets, under the gun. So, that's definitely, that's not where I thought he was going to go, but it definitely makes sense.
Let's go to the top of the board here and just kind of work our way down. How do you view the current debate between the best player in the world? Like, is it kind of a two-man race between Rahm and Rory at this point?
Let's get to the Masters and see how Scheffler does.
That's fair.
If Scheffler doesn't start to show himself by then, then maybe we can call it a two-man race. But I'm not sure that we're there yet. Now, what they're doing and the way they're playing is unbelievable. I mean,
yeah. And
to do it week in and week out, like it's kind of like that the elite factor that we've talked about before. And I think you can see all that Vegas kind of sees the same thing this week. If you just scroll, I mean, you're telling me that I can get Siwoo at like 91-1 this week? And that's outrageous to me.
Yeah.
He won 3 weeks ago, just got married. I think the golf course is really good for him. I mean, there was a couple others down. Well, I mentioned Aaron Wise, and then there was somebody else down there that was like, how is this guy this long at odds? Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Real quick, I think that our audience is probably incredibly unsurprised to hear you talk about Siwoo Kim. Guess what? He is one of my outrights, 90-1 at PointsBet. The other one, Sam Burns, 45-1 at PointsBet, is another guy that we've talked a lot about.
Yeah.
I swear we're not just like picking the same guys every week and just riding with that. Everything is still pointing us to these guys. But yeah, it's really funny that you went right to Siwoo there.
And then Taylor Montgomery is the other one that I talked about. And this will lead into a little bit. This is the only thing where I think actual putting stats and the way people really putt are different from what your data golf says. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that at this golf course, the greens are going to be better than last week.
Yep.
They're going to be more predictive, but you're also going to have more straight-ish putts. Whereas Pebble, you had these big breakers where you could kind of feel it in. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll just speak from experience here. If I've got a 12-footer, I'd rather it be a cup outside right than dead straight. I mean, it's just the way that it is. Now, there's other guys, and I think Taylor Montgomery fits that bill of if it's dead straight, he's going to hold it, like from 10 feet. Like it's just the way that he is. So, when looking at putting stats, especially the courses that we've played so far, that's kind of why I went back to Siwoo, is I was like, for where they've played, I think his is the most comparable. And I hate the way he's putting. That broomstick he's using is just terrible, but it's definitely working. So
yeah, he's been shockingly good on the greens, and that's just to add to everything else he does. He's gaining about 1/10 of a round with driving distance. He's been even better than that with his driving accuracy. solid iron player and seems to be improving. Like we've talked about it before on the show a number of times now in the last few weeks. Like he was always somebody who had the potential to get hot with his irons, and now we're seeing that upside is still there. But when he's not quite as quote unquote hot with the irons, like he's still consistently pretty good with them now, and that's a huge step forward and absolutely elite around the greens, which, as we said, like really plays well here. So I love Siwoo here. It's kind of interesting. Like this field is so loaded. There, like you could name any random player in the field, and I'd be interested to talk about it. We can't possibly get to everybody that we want to talked about on this show, but he's one that stands out. I think Cameron Young is somebody that's certainly worth talking about just because of how incredibly long and accurate he is off the tee. So we know that he's going to get a lot of scoring opportunities, and for him, it's just going to be about how well can he convert those opportunities. And on the few holes where he doesn't have a scoring opportunity, can he consistently make pars and get through those holes without a lot of damage? How are you feeling about Cam Young here?
Where did he play last week?
Overseas, I believe.
Yeah. Does that not worry you at all?
No, I don't think it matters at all. I mean, for one thing, like he's young. Traveling just doesn't matter a whole lot. And when we saw last year, he was playing every single week. Like how many times did we think, hey, at some point, like there's a really good chance that all of this play catches up to him and he's just too tired to do it again this week. And then he would play awesome again. So I don't think like fatigue or anything like that really matters, especially this early in the season. Like I'm sure he's pumped and ready to go for this event.
Yeah, I mean, it just is one of those things that stood out to me that I was like, man, the travel and he's kind of made his mark now of, that he's here to stay. So it's not, he doesn't have to be full steam ahead. He doesn't have to have his best every week. You kind of combine that, and I think he's going to deal with a lot of live talk. Why'd you go play over there last week? I mean, it's coming. The people are going to talk to him about it. Did you go play and, the deal fell through? Is that what you were doing? What was, So I just think that outside stuff for me, just knowing the way that can, not saying will, but can affect the golfer matters, especially in a field, like I said, that where you're there's so many good players here. I mean, in as far as DraftKings, it's so easy to build a really good lineup. Especially if you throw out your top 3 or 4 players, your really high salaries, you can, the eights and low nines, Matsuyama and Tom Kim, for instance, in the low nines, you can put them with a Montgomery and, some of those other guys that I just really like that mid range. So for me, Cam Young, I kind of just not because I don't think he can play here or I just don't like the schedule. There's got to be a reason he did it. That's all. That I don't know what it is. I just know there has to be a reason. He didn't just say, I'm going to go over there and play for fun.
That's potentially true. I will say, I think it's a nice segue, if nothing else, to an idea that I had this week. Like this field is so loaded and it's a course that has a lot of high leverage shots, like I talked about earlier, that I think you can make the argument that there's enough variance at this event that you can just lean into or lean away from like all chalk in DFS this week. Just play like a fully contrarian lineup because the field's so loaded. You're still going to be playing really good golfers who have a chance to win, and you're getting away from, or you're potentially benefiting from the variance. Like if Cameron Young is playing really well, for example, and then goes to one of these par 5s with water and ends up making a triple bogey because he puts 2 in the water after hitting a really good drive, it's not like that would be shocking, and yet it would immediately take him from being a very good play to somebody that you'd prefer to not have in your lineup. So if you go to like a Matt Fitzpatrick or Jordan Spieth or Sam Burns instead, I think that makes a lot of sense, even though Cameron Young projects far and away the best for me in that price range.
Yeah, I agree completely. And it's just, like I said, this week is one of those feel weeks for me. I'm going to take a lot of what's going on in everybody's schedule and golf game, and then combine it with a little bit of the course fit and like you said, try to be contrarian. I think pretty much every lineup in the 200 is going to have either Rory or Rahm. I could be wrong, but that's just the way that it looks to me. That's, that all the talk is going that way, and usually that's the way that people follow. So I wouldn't be, I'm okay with not having either one of them. And, there's a chance at their salary they could both finish, 15th and 17th, really good, respectable weeks, and not being the winning lineup.
Yeah. I don't think that they'll be that on. I have them both slightly under 20% right now in single entries. Basically, like what we've seen over the last few years is when we get these loaded fields, people really like to go balanced. They like having 6 golfers that they feel has a very real chance to win the tournament. So going all the way to like a Rahm or Rory at 11 or 10.8, when you instead can stack like Hideki Matsuyama, Patrick Cantlay, and Colin Morikawa at 94, 95, and 97, typically seems to be the type of route that people go to. So I will say though, like for me, Rory and Rahm are projecting so far above everybody else that I'm intrigued to go there. I don't know exactly how you stand there, but I think maybe my approach is going to be almost trying to correlate guys. Like the skill sets of Cameron Young and Rory McIlroy are so similar, especially off the tee, that if I'm playing Cameron Young, it makes a little bit more sense to play Rory. If I'm playing Rory, it makes a little bit more sense to play Cameron Young. So maybe I let some of those decisions kind of make themselves. But I'm curious to hear, do you have like a favorite player near the top, or do you have a favorite type of build? Maybe you want to go balanced this week?
Yeah, I'm going to go fairly balanced. I think, my cheap as of right now, my preliminary lineup, I think my cheapest is Wise at like 75 or 7,600, which is a pretty interesting area in itself. I think like Powers in that area. There's a lot of really good players right in that area. I think Matsuyama is your winner this week. Personally, that's just what I think. I'm gonna play him in DFS. I won't bet him outright just because of his number, I think, in this field. But I'm hoping that everybody goes to Morikawa. Those guys up in that range, Cam Young, and they miss Tom Kim is where I'm hoping that I can kind of leverage as far as the higher salary guys go.
I do have some bad news for you there. I have Tom Kim projected just under 20% as well.
Do you? I mean, I just haven't heard anybody talking about him, and I don't know. Like, I just thought that was a weird price for him. It wasn't high, but it wasn't.
Yeah. There are 2 guys in that range who I have projected under 10% between Cameron Young and Colin Morikawa. The 2 guys under 10% for me are Victor Hovland and Matt Fitzpatrick. What are your takes on those 2 guys? Because I feel like just from the ownership, I have a lot of interest in them, and they do project pretty well.
I'm going to go back to, what was wrong with Fitzpatrick last week? Mm-hmm. He played terrible on what I would call probably a better golf course for him. That being said, he's one of those elite talents that if he goes, he's got a obvious chance to win. Same with Hovland. The only time I try to steer clear of Hovland completely is the super tight, hard to chip places, and I don't really see that here. So I've got no problem rostering Hovland in that range. And matter of fact, he was one of the ones that's on my list. I'm a pen and paper, cross it off, kind of where I'm going with stuff. So I'm big on Hovland. Matter of fact, I would expect him to be in some of my showdown lineups, especially whatever day he plays in the morning. Like you said, Friday afternoon tends to get a little bit firmer, so I try to play my showdown lineup everybody Friday morning. I think there's an edge. But then again, we have these years where it's kind of cold really early, so I try to get the guys that are like, not first off as well.
So one of the reasons I wanted to talk about Hovland is because every week I kind of look through all of the stroke scan profiles, and I'm just looking for things that kind of stand out to me that I find interesting. And I don't think anything stood out to me more this week than this about Hovland. When I look at the long-term strokes gain profiles of everybody in this field, looking at DraftKings pricing, there are two guys with a baseline or with a long-term strokes gain around the green that's under 0. The first one is Corey Connors at negative 0.03, all the way down at 7,700. So this is just for guys 7,500 and up. There's Corey Connors at negative 0.03, and then there's Hovland at negative 0.14. Like, he's not just bad around the greens in comparison to the other elite players in the world. He's actually just bad around the greens, or at least I should say he has been in the long run. In his last 50 rounds, he is gaining 0.41 per round with his short game. I hadn't even noticed this. Do you think that he's turned his short game around and that he's actually a decent around the green player now?
No. Easy answer for me. I watched the motion last week with the tight lies, and it's kind of like chunk toes, chunk toe rides up the face, and it goes up there to 3 feet, but it's not a good shot. There's a big difference. Like,
that's fair. So maybe on courses where it's not being like truly tested, he can still gain, but the real test will kind of expose him, type of thing.
Yeah, and that's what I think, and I think he's kind of like, I don't know who to compare him to with a different facet of the game, but I think when he is clicking on all cylinders and maybe find something for that week, he's fine. He's going to be average to above average, but predicting that seems impossible.
That's fair. I think, though, I will say, like, he's been on a pretty incredible run starting at the Open Championship. And it's interesting because for a lot of last season, he wasn't playing well. So I don't think people quite realize how good he has been since the Open Championship, when he finished 4th and gained over a stroke per round with his around the green play. He went 4th, 20th, 35th, 15th, 5th, 34th, 5th, 21st, 10th, 23rd, win, 18th, 13th. So since the Open Championship, nothing worse than a tied for 35th finish. Around the green, he has only lost strokes 3 times, and his worst week was a quarter of a stroke per round lost at the FedEx St. Jude when he finished 20th. And like I said, he has gained over a stroke per round, over half a stroke in 2 others, and over 0.8 in 1 other at the CJ Cup in South Carolina. So I don't know. I think I was surprised to see this. I hadn't noticed it, and I think that it kind of has gone under, or just overlooked by a lot of the field, and I think that's why we're seeing him under 10% this week. So I have a lot of interest on DraftKings. I don't know about you. Like, is the low ownership enough for you to really feel like you want to use Hovland?
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely be one of the things that I look at tomorrow night for sure, if he continues to look like he's going to be. Because the other thing about Hovland is he can go out there and out ball strike the whole field. Yeah. Like, it is possible. And the other thing is, all these guys, like I said, are going to be trying to hit it in bunkers, and his bunker game is not like his tight lie chipping game. I don't consider his bunker game elite by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not. And like you just said, the FedEx deal, like that, how predictable is that? That, tight Bermuda fairways is where he struggled chipping. Yeah. Like, there, that's just the way it is. So, yeah, I mean, at a place like this, low ownership on Hovland is 100% going to draw my interest when it comes to Wednesday night.
Another guy I want to touch on, one of my outrights this week, 45-1, Sam Burns. It sounds like you're kind of on board with me with the theory that the course fit doesn't really matter for him. When he has it, he's going to contend, and when he contends, he knows how to win. So if there's a player that, like, I personally just kind of ignore the projections on, it's him. He's priced at 45-1. He's 6th in my expected win rate model. That just seems like an automatic bet.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I'm never going to argue with the Sam Burns outright unless he's, 7, unless he's like, 7.5 to 1, like Rahm and McIlroy are this week. Yeah. I'm not going to ever, anytime they're going to hang 40 pluses on Burns, you're definitely going to have to look at him. Once again, one of those guys, if he goes, he's got a chance to beat everybody without a doubt. So Yeah, 100%. I mean, even his DFS price was fit right in there. I actually thought that he would be higher owned than Tom Kim, and that's just from a feel standpoint. I know you guys are more analytical with it. That's just more of what I expected. I usually don't look at projections till late Wednesday.
Yeah, I do think they tend to move, and I'll be very interested to see how they look after my update. I'm hopeful that Hovland stays down. I'm hopeful that Burns stays down. I've got Burns just under 10% right now. I don't think I'd use him in DFS at that number, but if that 10% becomes like 6-7%, now I'm interested. If it becomes 15%, there's not a chance in hell I'm using him with how many other options there are. Let's go down the board a little bit. There's a group that I kind of am having trouble separating. So I'm curious to hear how you would kind of rank Keegan Bradley, Corey Connors, Russell Henley, Brian Harmon, Aaron Wise.
I'm going to lean immediately to Aaron Wise out of that group for me. We were talking about earlier about the personal bias, of playing with him and being around him. Mm-hmm. But also, from day one when I played with him, I always thought he could be elite talent. He hits it so good off the tee, and this place just rewards. He hits it high and straight, doesn't curve much. Like this place can really, you're not going to see a ton of wind, so you're not going to see any harm from that. I haven't looked at the weather. You just generally don't see a lot of wind here. That's where I lean as far as all those guys go. And there's another guy that is kind of in that mix to me that fits this course well, but I'm going to lean away from is Keith Mitchell because, 5 days in contention, played an extra day, didn't turn out the way he had wanted. That's one of those personal feel deals where I'm just put an X to his name.
I was just going to ask you about him because in terms of like just skill off the tee in this field, I think the top three are very clearly Rahm, Rory, Cameron Young. I would put Scheffler fourth. I think I would put Keith Mitchell fifth.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I love him this week. Everything about him. I hate the way that it's like the same kind of feeling. If you're gonna roster Cam Young, you probably should roster Keith Mitchell, right? So you can start with Rory, Young, and Keith Mitchell because they kind of all work their way in together. Mm-hmm. Cam Young travel schedule, Mitchell being in contention, long week, starts and stops, but they all should go together here. I mean, there's no way I would never argue seeing those three in a core to start, any lineup in DraftKings and build around it.
Yeah, a little skill set stack. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Let's see. Any other guys I wanted to ask you about? Is Siwoo Kim a lock for you at 7,800 like he is for me?
A lock or a lock?
Like I'm locking him into my lineup. I will figure out the other 5 spots later, but I know that Siwoo is going to be in there.
I was baffled by the price, to be honest.
Yeah, I was baffled by the price. And then I was even more baffled by the fact that he's not projecting at like 15 to 20% ownership. I've got him at 9%.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't. The other thing is people that are going to listen, they're going to be like, oh, it's a lot. It doesn't mean it's going to work out. But to be at that price for his skill set, for, the course fit, his ability, the way he's been playing, I feel like he's almost the way that people act there, like, the whole scene isn't going to get to him. I just really think he's 7,800 is funny to me. Like, I don't understand.
And I think too, like, we're talking a lot about ownership here. It is worth saying this field is so stacked that the quote unquote chalk this week is going to be a lot lower owned than what it usually is. Like the most popular player under Cameron Young that I have right now is Keith Mitchell at 14%. So to some degree, you don't even have to pay that much attention to ownership this week. You're going to find natural differentiation just playing guys you like because there are so many damn options that the ownership isn't going to concentrate on a handful of guys. It's going to be pretty spread out.
Yeah, and I agree for sure that this isn't, especially just being a single entry guy anyway. Like, I'm not going to put too much stock in many. I think the exception of that rule would be the Hovland situation. I'm going to look. If I can get an elite talent that has the ability to go win at a really low owned rate, low on percentage, I'm going to play them. So that, I think that you're right. I think for the most part, you're not going to see, 32% out of anybody in the 200 single entry.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. One other guy I want to ask you about, Colin Morikawa. The reason I want to bring him up is because another guy who it's maybe gone unnoticed to some degree. We obviously know that he's one of, if not the best iron players in the world. For a lot of last year, he wasn't playing that way. Like there was a stretch where his last 50 round strokes gained approach per round was around 0.4 or 0.5 when previously it had been around 1. Well, in his last 50, it's now up to 1.15 again. 1.33 in his last 20 rounds. And in that time, he's gaining 0.9 strokes per round in driving accuracy alone. I've never seen anybody gain this much just from accuracy off the tee. So he's somebody who should have a lot of opportunities to score. He's somebody who can take advantage of those scoring opportunities with his iron play, regardless of the bucket that it's in. He's elite with his wedges, mid irons, and long irons. Do you think that he has the short game and the putting to warrant the 20% ownership that I currently have him projected at?
Well, I mean, it comes down to the deal that if you think he's ball striking is going to carry over, then yes. Because you get, to me, an event like this, you get less variables than you do at some of the normal events. You're going to get less wins. You're going to get less bad lies. You're going to get, just less variation, I think, in golf in general. Overseeded greens. I mean, just to me, it's just going to be more consistent with stats this week. And that's hard for me to say. I got to, to be honest, I think this is a week where you're gonna see guys like that, I mean, he's been playing awesome. He's obviously back to healthy. I think a lot of the bad ball striking stuff, I think he either had a personal issue or he was unhealthy, one or the other. And that's kind of one of the previous episodes of not knowing how people feel, what's going on in their personal life. What do we not know? Does he have a back injury that he's just not talking about? Does he have a personal issue he's not talking about? So I think, that stretch of not very good golf out of him, I think you can kind of just put that as not normal. I think, I think he's an elite player personally. But once again, you have 8% or whatever Hovland and 20% Morikawa, same player.
Yeah, at least similar, there.
Yeah.
And certainly I think you could say if you were projecting win rate over the next year or 2 years, you're going to have Hovland and Morikawa pretty similar to one another. So when one is 20% and the other is under 10%, and by the way, the one who's lower owned is also $400 cheaper. Maybe it does make sense to just go to Hovland or use both. It doesn't have to be an or situation. It can be an and. But yeah, anybody else in this field that you really want to discuss?
That's really about it. I thought I found it pretty easy, so to speak, to build a lineup that I was like, oh, these guys can all play. The only guy that I'm leaning towards playing that we haven't talked about is Billy Horschel. And so I just think he embraces the situation. He embraces what's going on there. He likes it. And he can obviously play at that place.
That's an interesting one. He doesn't project as well for me. And honestly, I don't think it's that he projects poorly for his price. I think it's just that there are guys around him that project so well for their price. For me, I would play Jason Day, Siwoo Kim, Keegan, Connors, Norin, Seamus, Wise, Henley, Harmon, Mitchell, all before I played Horschel, I think. But again, like everybody in this field can play golf. So there's an argument to be made that as opposed to other weeks where the optimal way to build lineups is having a mix of contrarian guys and then chalky, high expectation, high probability plays, there's an argument to be made that here everybody is good enough to contend whenever they play well, that you can have a lineup of 6 contrarian guys and be in really good shape.
Yeah, and Horschel was just like, he was kind of the last one into my lineup. I was, like you, I think that whole area is just so difficult. What led me to him most of all was kind of the it factor of the golf course and the scene there, and the way that he embraces it and really seems to enjoy it. But yeah, I mean, it took everything I had to not play power, and I may go back there. That might be where I end up.
I know you said that you were probably not going below Aaron Wise in your lineup, but there are a couple cheap guys who I want to ask you about: Brennan Steele, Wyndham Clark, Luke List. How do you feel about those 3 guys?
So somebody else had brought up Wyndham Clark to me earlier, maybe yesterday, asked me about him.
For what it's worth, I think I'd go to Steele before Clark. But it's,
and like Luke List is just, I mean, if he finished 8th or if he missed a cut, would you be surprised by either outcome? Like he's one of those guys I always have a hard time getting right. So I'm not going to force somebody into a lineup when I just, I struggle with figuring them out anyway, But I think Brendan Steele's a solid. I mean, when you go down there, there's a lot of other guys down there that, man, I mean, is Woodland going to find form? Like he can, I mean,
I think if I went back to Woodland this week, people would want my head on a stake.
But I mean, there's just guys down there that I think that can really play. That I can't believe that you didn't mention Kitayama at only 7,000. I know you love the way that he drives it, and he's. Yeah, I thought that was a little bit low price tag, but I think it's just relevant to the field.
Yeah, I don't have an issue going there. He's a great scorer, which I think is a lot of my argument for Luke List. But with List, like I'm a little bit less interested than a lot of people would probably expect me to be at this $6,900 price tag, just because I think even more important for him than course fit seems to be how difficult is the golf course. Because where he seems to be best is when the field is struggling to make any birdies, he can still make birdies. No matter how difficult the golf course is, he can make birdies. When there are a ton of scoring holes and where everyone in the field is making their fair share of birdies, that's when he seems to have a little bit more trouble, like at least contending. He can still do well in that situation, but he has a lot more trouble kind of overcoming the fact that he's going to miss a lot of makeable putts. So I think I'm leaning away from him a little bit, just because I don't necessarily love his chances to contend this week. But I do feel like he could do pretty well. And regardless of where he finishes, I think it's a pretty safe bet that he will finish higher on the DraftKings leaderboard than the actual leaderboard, just because of his scoring ability.
Yeah, and I agree. And there was another guy in that area that I kicked around the idea of playing because I know nobody else will play him, but B just has the ability to drive it so far, and that's Cameron Champ.
Yeah, I thought about him too.
He's one of those guys that I don't know when it's going to be, but we need to be ahead of the game on him, because he's going to rip off 3 or 4 good events in a row. I just don't know when that's going to be. And I feel like this golf course would be a good start for the way that he plays.
We talked about some of the approach skill data with Josh earlier, and if there's anybody that like the approach skill data means more for, I haven't found him yet, because Champ loses a lot with his half wedges, like between 50 and 100 yards, loses a ton with his wedge game, 100 to 150, loses a bunch with his mid irons, 150 to 200, and gains among the most in the world from 200 plus yards with his long irons. So whenever
but he's hitting a 7-iron from 210. Like
yeah, that's definitely part of it. But whenever we get to a course that it's very clear that all of the signal from approach play is in the long irons, that's when I'm going to play Cameron Champ and not a moment sooner. There's a chance that it's this week. And so maybe as we talked about earlier with Josh, I did find some strong signal for long iron play here. He didn't. And I found more signal just from iron play as a whole, where Champ is not very good, loses about a quarter of a stroke per round. So I don't think I'm going to go to him right away. But if he starts let's say he plays Thursday and Friday, well, he's top 20 or something going into the weekend, he's definitely someone that I would consider targeting in Showdown on the weekend, because that would, if he's playing really well at that point, that would increase my confidence that, okay, long iron play really is important here. And one other guy I'll mention there, if you're playing Champ, it's a really good idea to play Sungjae Im. Sungjae is pretty much neutral with wedges. He's pretty good with mid irons, but nothing special. And it's basically between Sungjae, Hovland, Morikawa, and Xander for the best long player in the world. So you get that huge advantage for both Sungjae and Cameron Champ if this course is all about long iron play.
And in fairness to that, Rahm and Rory don't have as many long irons to hit as those guys do either.
True. But this data is on a per shot basis. Now, it does mean that the sample sizes aren't the greatest for these numbers, but it is at least on a per shot basis. So Rahm and Rory are gaining 0.05 and 0.06 strokes per shot with their long irons. Schauffele and Sungjae are at 0.1 and 0.11, same as Morikawa. So pretty much doubling them up with the long irons.
Yeah, I just meant more as a reference of you can't hit as many clubs if you don't hit those clubs in the greens very often, and
that's true.
So it's just one of those deals that, it takes a little bit of the predictability away, but we talk about, it's golf. So there's not, you can take what you've got and build the best you can around it and hope you hit on all the right things that week.
Absolutely. Anything else that you want to touch on about this week?
No, I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. I can't wait to see how it plays out. I hope we get a jam-packed leaderboard on Sunday and nobody runs and hides. And there's definitely a good possibility here.
I'll also say I am so thankful to have this tournament to sweat and to enjoy in the days leading up to the Super Bowl, so that I'm not just stuck in my own mind, anxious about how the Eagles are going to do. But with that,
it should be a good game. I don't think we can argue with having two of the best teams in the NFL playing the Super Bowl.
It's almost I almost feel cheated, because this in many ways is the best Super Bowl in years. And I can't just enjoy it from a football perspective. Of course, if the Eagles win, I won't care about that at all. I'll just be over the moon that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. But yeah, I'm with you. I think it should be a phenomenal game. And hopefully we're sweating some PGA winners and some really good DraftKings lineups in PGA at the same time.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed the kind of just theory discussion with Josh. We'll try to do some more of that. Any feedback is always welcome. If you want to hear more stories from us, if you want more picks, more general strategy discussion, whatever it is, leave it in the comments, reach out to us individually, DM us on Twitter, whatever the case may be. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks.